good evening. When I was in high school, my mom bought me this book because we both thought that if I had this book, I would read it, but I never have. And this has a lot of Jane. It says the complete novels, so does that mean that all of her novels are in this book? The one that I wanted to read to you was Lady Susan, because I think many people have read like Pride and Prejudice and have seen the movies, but this is less often talked about, and this is the art. Let's see. Actually, this is the cover art of Lady Susan, and I love antique desks like this. I love her dress. I love the chair. I love the draperies. I love the painting or the picture. I love everything vintage. Alright, so this is the cover art of the letter 1. So I will read this to you. Letter 1. Lady Susan Vernon to Mr. Vernon, Lingford, December. My dear brother, I can no longer refuse myself the pleasure of profiting by your kind invitation when we last parted, of spending some weeks with you at Churchill, and therefore, if quite convenient to you and Mrs. Verdon, to receive me at present, I shall hope within a few days to be introduced to a sister whom I have so long desired to be acquainted with. My kind friends here are most affectionately urgent with me to prolong my stay, but their hospitable and cheerful dispositions lead them too much into society for my present situation and state of mind, and I impatiently look forward to the hour when I shall be admitted into your delightful retirement. I long to be made known to your dear little children, in whose hearts I shall be very eager to secure an interest. I shall soon have occasion for all my fortitude, as I am on the point of separation from my own daughter. The long illness of her dear father prevented my paying her that attention which duty and affection equally dictated, and I have but too much reason to fear that the governess to whose care I consigned her was unequal to the charge. I have therefore resolved on placing her at one of the best private schools in town, where I shall have an opportunity of leaving her myself in my way to you. I am determined, you see, not to be denied admittance at Churchill, It would indeed give me most painful sensations to know that it were not in your power to receive me. Your most obliged and affectionate sister, Susan Vernon. Letter 2. Okay. Letter to Lady Susan to Mrs. Johnson, Langford. You are mistaken, my dear Alicia, in supposing me fixed at this place for the rest of winter. It grieves me to say how greatly you are mistaken, for I have seldom spent 3 months more agreeably than those which have just flown away. At present, nothing goes smoothly. The females of the family are united against me. You foretold how it would be when I first came to Langford, and Mainwaring is so uncommonly pleasing that I was not without apprehensions myself. I remember saying to myself as I drove to the house, I like this man. Pray heaven no harm come of it. But I was determined to be discreet, to bear in mind my being only 4 months a widow, and to be as quiet as possible. And I have been so. My dear creature, I have admitted no one's attentions but Mainwaring's. I have avoided all general flirtation whatever. I have distinguished no creature besides of all the numbers resorting hither, except Sir James Martin, on whom I bestowed a little notice in order to detach him from Miss Mainwaring. But if the world could know my motive there, they would honor me. I have been called an unkind mother, but it was the sacred impulse of maternal affection. It was the advantage of my daughter that led me on, and if that daughter were not the greatest simpleton on earth, I might have been rewarded for my exertions as I ought. Sir James did make proposals to me for Frederica, but Frederica, who was born to be the torment of my life, chose to set herself so violently against the match that I thought it better to lay aside the scheme for the present. I have more than once repented that I did not marry him myself, and were he but 1 degree less contemptibly weak, I certainly should, but I must own myself rather romantic in that respect, and that riches only will not satisfy me. The event of all this is very provoking. Sir James is gone, Maria highly incensed, and Mrs. Mainwaring unsupportably jealous. So jealous, in short, and so enraged against me, that in the fury of her temper I should not be surprised at her appealing to her guardian if she had the liberty of addressing him. But there your husband stands, my friend, and the kindest, most amiable action of his life was his throwing her off forever on her marriage. Keep up his resentment. Therefore I charge you, we are now in a sad state. No house was ever more altered. The whole family are at war, and Mainwaring scarcely dares speak to me. It is time for me to be gone. I have therefore determined on leaving them, and shall spend, I hope, a comfortable day with you in town within this week. If I am as little in favor with Mr. Johnson as ever, you must come to me at number 10 Wigmore Street. But I hope this may not be the case, for as Mr. Johnson, with all his faults, is a man to whom that great word respectable is always given, I am known to be so intimate with his wife. His slighting me has an awkward look. I take town in my way to that unsupportable spot, a country village. For I am really going to Churchill. Forgive me, my dear friend. It is my last resource. Were there another place in England open to me, I would prefer it. Charles Vernon is my aversion, and I am afraid of his wife. At Churchill, however, I must remain till I have something better in view. My young lady accompanies me to town, where I shall deposit her under the care of Miss Summers in Wigmore Street, till she becomes a little more reasonable. She will make good connections there, as the girls are all of the best families. The price is immense, and much beyond what I can ever attempt to pay. Adieu. I will send you a line as soon as I arrive in town. Yours ever, Susan Vernon. Letter 3. This will be the last letter. Mrs. Vernon to Lady de Courcy, in Churchill. My dear mother, I am very sorry to tell you that it will not be in our power to keep our promise of spending the Christmas with you, and we are prevented that happiness by a circumstance which is not likely to make us any amends. Lady Susan, in a letter to her brother, has declared her intention of visiting us almost immediately, and as such a visit is in all probability merely an affair of convenience, it is impossible to conjecture its length. I was by no means prepared for such an event, nor can I now account for her ladyship's conduct. Langford appeared so exactly the place for her in every respect, as well from the elegant and expensive style of living there as from her particular attachment to Mrs. Mainwaring, that I was very far from expecting so speedy a distinction, though I always imagined from her increasing friendship for us since her husband's death that we should at some future period be obliged to receive her. Mr. Vernon, I think, was a great deal too kind to her when he was in Staffordshire. Her behavior to him, independent of her general character, has been so inexcusably artful and ungenerous since our marriage was first in agitation, and that no one less amiable and mild than himself could have overlooked it at all. And though as his brother's widow, and in narrow circumstances, it was proper to render her pecuniary assistance, I cannot help thinking his pressing invitation to her to visit us at Churchill perfectly unnecessary. Disposed, however, as he always is to think the best of every one, her display of grief and professions of regret and general resolutions of prudence were sufficient to soften his heart and make him really confide in her sincerity. But as for myself, I am still unconvinced, and plausibly, as her ladyship has now written, I cannot make up my mind till I better understand her real meaning in coming to us. You may guess, therefore, my dear madam, with what feelings I look forward to her arrival. She will have occasion for all those attractive powers for which she is celebrated to gain any share of my regard, and I shall certainly endeavor to guard myself against their influence, if not accompanied by something more substantial. She expresses a more eager desire of being acquainted with me and makes very generous mention of my children. But I am not quite weak enough to suppose a woman who has behaved with inattention, if not unkindness, to her own child should be attached to any of mine. Miss Vernon is to be placed at a school in town before her mother comes to us, which I am glad of for her sake and my own. It must be to her advantage to be separated from her mother, and a girl of 16 who has received so wretched an education would not be a very desirable companion here. Reginald has long wished to see this captivating Lady Susan, and we shall depend on his joining our party soon. I am glad to hear that my father continues so well, and am, with best love, Catherine Vernon. I will continue letter 4, 5, and 6 at another video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good night.